Here's a fact. He's a grown man. 20. Listen to what I'm saying. If you want me to answer you. No, he was an adult, 17. Hold up, okay? Not confrontational. I respect what everybody does, okay? But 17 years old, that's an adult in the state of Texas, okay?
Well, hey, everybody, the true crime community went crazy with the story of this 17-year-old Texas man who was reported missing for 8 years, now 25 years old. Everything from human trafficking to murder. And the conspiracy theories were running rampant everywhere except the Houston Police Department. What happened to Rudy Farias? Rudy Farias was 17 years old when he disappeared in Houston in 2015. 8 years later, this kid, now an adult, was found sitting outside of a church in the Magnolia Park area. I've been to that area. I know the area fairly well. Now, his discovery led to internet sleuths and online conspiracy theorists to sharing wild tales of what happened. Now, one person who's close to the case is suggesting that Rudy was kept as a hostage in his own home and may have been sexually abused by his mother over those 8 years. One of the best news reports I've seen on this case came from ABC Houston. It's ABC 13 Houston and reporter Brooke Taylor, and I want to listen to that right off the bat to get the full story. What I want to explore with you for just a few minutes, the possibility that all of this was happening under the direction of the man's mother. Now, according to Texas law, a 17-year-old is old enough to give consent. That means that generally it's legal for this person to have sex with anybody who's at least 17 years old, as long as both parties are willing and participating and consenting in this thing. Now, an individual isn't an adult in Texas until age 18. So it appears, to me anyway, that the police might have had this one a little bit wrong when they said this kid was an adult when this happened. He wasn't an adult, but he could legally consent. Now, this thing isn't over at this point, and even though there's consent, maybe even from both parties, an individual still can be charged with sexual assault in Texas. In particular, if an adult has sexual relationships with a minor, even though both parties are consenting, it could be ruled sexual assault in the eyes of the law. And frankly, imagine how inflamed a jury is going to feel when they learn that possibly a parent was engaged in that assault, hoping to somehow slide under this consent law. And this consent law stems from something called the Romeo and Juliet Law. It's a law that provides a little bit of protection for minors who choose to engage in sexual relationships. The law is specifically there so that two teenagers, 17-year-olds for instance, could get involved in a relationship and not be charged with statutory rape. Now, it has to have, though, there's some specifics that mean that you can't be more than a 3-year age gap between both parties. And frankly, I personally believe that somebody who's in a position of special trust, somebody like a parent, isn't going to be fitting in that. They're going to be excluded from that allowance. So let's put this all into perspective by going back and looking at the timeline in this case. And to do so, we got to go back to 2011 when Farias's brother was tragically killed in a motorcycle accident. Now, according to a Dateline report, Rudy and his mother were the first people at the scene after the accident happened when the boy's brother died, and he watched him die. And undoubtedly that created some emotional trauma in the family. But then, 3 years after the tragic death of Rudy's brother, Rudy's father committed suicide in 2014. Now, there are reports that suggest that he was a police officer, that he was under an internal affairs investigation at the time of the suicide. Apparently, he was working in patrol and traffic functions, And it all swirled, this investigation swirled around fraudulent traffic citations. 2 different citations written at 2 different locations at the same time, miles apart. Now again, his father was a Houston police officer. And I really kind of look at this as a pretty weak reason to commit suicide. The fact that he might have had dates and times wrong on a couple of tickets. Nonetheless, he was under investigation. But frankly, I point back more to the loss of his son 2 years earlier, and perhaps depression might have even been impacting his work performance. But I suspect that suicide was more likely linked to depression over the loss of his son than the fact that he was being investigated because some dates and times were wrong on traffic citations. But I'm going to be looking for your comments down below in regard to that one. I wonder how you're thinking about this. But now, let's fast forward 2 years following his father's suicide. Rudy disappears on March 6, 2015. It seemed like a normal day, and the kid was taking his 2 family dogs out for a walk. The dogs were later located, but Rudy never came home, according to his mother, and his mother reported him missing. Now, what we didn't learn until this case unfolded this week was that Rudy actually did return home the following day, and according to news reports, it was then that he becomes a domestic hostage. There are a whole bunch of more questions than answers in this case, but for some reason, Rudy remains on the missing persons list in the state of Texas and in the Houston Police Department. When he disappears, a missing person flyer suggests that he's diagnosed with depression, PTSD, and anxiety, and that he'd stopped taking medication. Again, this could all go back to seeing his brother die, his father committing suicide. This kid had some baggage that he was carrying. And I'm sure his mother had that baggage as well as she tried to keep this family together. I don't know anything about her, but now there's a whole bunch of scrutiny on her. Over the years, though, there are a number of reported sightings where Rudy people say, hey, I saw Rudy. When they call police or talk to his mother would say, no, it's not true. You're thinking of a cousin, but we still don't know where Rudy is. And she keeps this guy's going, according to media reports, for 8 years. In 2018, the Houston Police Department received a call from Farias's cousin who said that she spotted Farias at his mother's home. And again, the mother said no. Police investigated, but they were unable to locate the boy. They were unable to locate him until June 29th of 2023, when Rudy Farias is apparently located outside of that Houston church, laying on the ground in an unresponsive state. I don't know whether he was beaten unconscious or if he was under the influence of drugs, but all we know is that he was unresponsive. Farias, when police responded and had fire department personnel respond, and emergency medical personnel refused any treatment or any help at the scene. Police let him go because he's a 25-year-old person, but they did identify him as this missing kid, and he said he was safe, and he said he wanted to go back home. Now, his mother later reported that she took Farias to a local hospital where he was recovering from cuts and bruises, and all the media reports would suggest that his hair was blood-soaked and that he was non-communicative. Again, I don't know how true that is or how much has been kind of made a little bigger than it really is. His mother told media, though, that she thought her son had been abused and beaten. Again, she didn't say, oh, and by the way, I've been keeping him at the house for 8 years. But yesterday, neighbors told media and other people who were looking into this case, including law enforcement, that they had seen Farias around the neighborhood for years. And they were shocked to learn that this kid was reported missing, this kid who's now an adult. They knew him as by the name of Dolph, a shortened version given to the name Rudolph. Now again, Rudy's mother disputes their claims that they saw Rudy hanging around the house over those 8 years, said that neighbors were only confusing Rudy with a nephew who had stopped by the house on multiple occasions. But neighbors are saying no way. They know that the person they saw was Rudy now. So in that news clip that we watched at the beginning of this video, there's a community activist named Connell X. And he reports that he was told by Rudy that Rudy's mother had been keeping him hostage, including drugging him and abusing him. Well, as of this morning's press release by the Houston Police Department, Rudy is home with his mother. Some people are inflamed by that. The police are saying he's an adult. He can choose where he wants to go. Well, if he was under some kind of mental duress, can he really do that? And what's in his best interest? That seems to be the question on everybody's mind. But Rudy, he's home with his mother. Possibly the same person who could have been keeping him hostage and abusing him for those 8 years. And this all makes me wonder what emotional trauma she must have suffered. After her son died, she undoubtedly witnessed that as well, and her husband died. She may have been the one to find him. And will all of that play part in this evolving story that we're watching? We're going to continue watching it, and I hope you will, but I want to point out a few key moments from today's press conference, and I'm just going to play them, and I'm going to look for your thoughts down below, but let's watch.
Good morning. I'm Lieutenant Zamora with the Homicide Division Missing Persons Unit to my left. Today we're discussing facts related to 25-year-old Rudy Farias, who was reported missing on March 7, 2015. He was 17 years old when his mother reported him missing. During the 8-year time frame where he was missing, investigators followed up on many tips, leads, collected evidence proving that Rudy was not missing during the 8-year period. Many of these facts included contacts and statements with relatives, friends, neighbors, and medical professionals. Rudy was recently identified as having previous HPD interactions, meaning that he made contact with patrol officers out on the street. However, during these contacts, fictitious names and date of births were given, misleading the officers, and Rudy would remain missing. In fact, both Janie, Rudy's mother, and Rudy himself gave fictitious names while interacting with various patrol officers. After investigators talked with him yesterday, it was discovered that Rudy returned home the following day on March 8th, 2015. The mother, Janie, continued to deceive police by remaining adamant that Rudy was still missing. She alleged her nephew was the person friends and family were seen coming and going. However, we disputed that. Currently, the DA has declined any charges at this time for making fictitious reports and failure to ID. Investigators have reached out to Adult Protective Services. HPD Victim Services has reached out. We've also connected Rudy with Victim Services to ensure that he has a method to recover. Now, based on Rudy's interview, there were no reports of sexual abuse reported. If there is a disclosure made, we will continue to investigate. Currently, the investigation is active, and there are new leads coming in. We'll continue to follow those leads. We do take all allegations seriously, and any new information or facts that we receive will be investigated.
Well, what are your thoughts? Do you believe Rudy's mother held him hostage during those 8 years? I mean, why would this kid be, or why would this man be allowed to leave now? Or do you believe that he actually summoned the courage to leave on his own, grabbed her credit card and said, enough's enough? And if that's the case and he did so, why on earth would he return to a place where he was fleeing after he was found by police? I'm going to be looking for your answers down below, and I'd like to know how you feel about things. And I hope you'll be fair with each other as you talk about what you think is happening and what they think is happening. Make sure you're hitting that like and subscribe button and ring the bell. And please, folks, share Profiling Evil with your friends. And if you like audio podcasts, check out Profiling Evil podcasts on your favorite podcast platform. We're seeing a lot of growth over on our podcast, and we really appreciate your support in that regard. Hey, consider joining our channel memberships and consider donating through things like PayPal, or look at our books online at profilingevil.com or on Amazon and pick those up. Hey, make sure that you tune in tonight as I talk with Dr. Nikki Jackson about a convicted murderer that she thinks was wrongly convicted. This guy received a prison sentence for 300 years for the murder of 5 people. Did police get it wrong? Join us at 9 p.m. Mountain Time for this special live Profiling Evil. And thanks for your support. We'll see you soon at the next crime scene.